Hi, and welcome to Highbrow, Lowbrow. I'm your host, Shaun. With me here is Ron Sensei. Each week we get together to discuss a well-regarded, highly received film against a cheesy blockbuster.
Basically an artsy-fartsy film versus mindless good time. Now this episode we're doing something different. Instead of picking a genre, we decided to just pick a director we both know well and love. And who did we pick, Shaun?
For this go-around, we picked Stanley Kubrick. He's a critically acclaimed, very popular director, and his films are known for their very artistic and meaningful prose.
And I got the box set here. So
we got a box set of Stanley Kubrick. We have our pick of the litter. But first up is my highbrow pick, 2001's A Space Odyssey. Ron, cheers.
Cheers.
Based on a short story by revered sci-fi author Arthur C. Clarke, 2001 A Space Odyssey is about an imposing black structure that provides a connection between the past and the future. When Dr. David Bowman and other astronauts are sent on a mysterious mission, their ship's computer system, HAL, begins to display increasingly strange behavior, leading up to a tense showdown between man and machine that results in a mind-bending trek through space and time. All right, Ron, what did you think of this highbrow film? Although I'm sure you've seen it plenty.
I've seen it plenty, and it. Well, first of all, it's very hard for the summary because, in reality, it's like, what the fuck is it about? It's not until now, like years and years later, that I actually kind of understood it. Like this time when we watched it, I totally get it now. This is a definition of a space opera. What do I think about it? I think it is super epic. It is one of those films that really changed everything. The psychedelic scenes, when he was going into that wormhole thing into the monolith structure, to just everything, the space scenes. And even the ending, again, it mirrors the Bone discovery, and in that it is the next evolution of man. Now I totally fucking get it, right? Back then I didn't. I was like, what the fuck? What's a space baby? But then now I'm like, okay, well that's the next evolution of man, and now it's this thing is coming to Earth, and I felt that the film is historic, the film is a landmark, but in terms of Stanley Kubrick as a director, you can't really argue about his greatness. However, this is their 1968, right? It's still, in the Lowbrow pick, we can compare and contrast, but here, he's kind of like the experimental Stanley Kubrick, the indulgent Stanley Kubrick, where some scenes it takes too long, and you're like, okay. But then again, it is a space opera. Everything is just majestic and like regal, and everything's just like epic, right? Even though the scene is just a small scene, but it is. Anyway, that's what I thought about it. If you're a film enthusiast, it's really worth a watch, and it's really worth the study. So that's what I thought.
Cool. 2001: A Space Odyssey is a tremendous classic. I think one of the things that I mainly took away from this film is that it really does away with traditional narrative. It relies on you to make the connections between the various stages of the film, from the development of prehistoric man to our travels through space to our evolution with this weird alien species. I thought it is a sort of a beautiful marriage of all these images and edits and music and sounds that sort of become more than what it is. Actually, because it's a lot. It's so much, it's interesting that there's no traditional leads. Like, even though there's Dr. Dave Bowman, who's the sort of leading guy of the film, he's not really the lead of the film. The film doesn't have a stereotypical lead. Dave sort of leads you through certain portions of the film, but he's there to represent us and represent man. If this would be the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band, and Tarkovsky's Solaris would be the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. I think there's a comparison with those two films, these two sci-fi space films, that do seem indulgent, but I think they're making really, really, really bold moves in terms of telling their story. And I think, the space journey in that era was really illustrative of, I think these films are really illustrative of that sentiment in the 60s and 70s of where the space era would take us and furthering that exploration through their art.
This is mastery at its finest, right? Because the story is told in the most basic, inclusive sense of filmmaking. No dialogue, no exposition, just action. Just you're watching something in film. It doesn't matter whether you speak English or not. You will get it. And then it takes a master to do that, a master of filmmaking, because not only does he have to see that vision pre-production, during production when he's shooting it, and post when he's putting it together. Is it cohesive? Is it understandable? Do you get it? The answer obviously is yes.
Yeah, it like probably took me a couple of viewings. I would say probably like third time around maybe to really sort of understand what the film was trying to say. But then just the larger ramifications of it and the idea of the development of man.
Right, because we
compared to our own actual
we're
existence.
such an anomaly, right? Yeah. So it took a black fucking monolith iPhone looking thing to actually change the monkeys to man. Now it will take a super cosmic baby to go to us, the standard human being, and then change us to our next iteration, our next version, or Super Saiyan 2 or something.
Sure.
But that's the ending of the film. It took me so long. It took me so long to actually make that connection.
Yeah, just to like one last thing I wanted to mention in terms of this film is I felt like, in terms of I feel like this is one of his boldest movies that he's made, or that he, will make, because But this is like one of the films that sort of takes out is so narratively different and strange and goes out of its way to be unique. I think it signals a real huge leap of thought and understanding, and I think that deserves to be praised and acknowledged. And experimental sometimes could feel a little bit like it's too highfalutin, but I think I see experimental as like a sort of dare to see, where can you take a piece of art? How far can you take it? What can it grow beyond the normal expectations we have of an art or medium?
So that's what we thought about 2001, A Space Odyssey. Next up is my pick, another Kubrick film. And in fact, my first Kubrick film and my favorite Kubrick film, Full Metal Jacket. Full Metal Jacket is a 1987 British-American war film directed, co-written, and produced by Stanley Kubrick. Based on the novel by Gustav Hasford, The Short Timers, the storyline follows a platoon of U.S. Marines through their boot camp training in Parris Island, South Carolina, and their experiences in the Vietnamese cities of Da Nang and Hue during the Tet Offensive of the Vietnam War. Okay, Sean, you go first. What's up with Full Metal Jacket?
Of course I love Full Metal Jacket. It's a classic film. I also feel like it is one of the first Stanley Kubrick films I've watched. I feel like with Full Metal Jacket, it's the first time people have been exposed to the intensity and the life of Army life.
Get your fat ass over there, Private Pile. Oh, that's right, Private Pile. Don't make any fucking effort to get up to the top of the fucking obstacle. If God wanted you up there, he would have miracled your ass up there by now, wouldn't he?
I think that commentary, the levels with which they go to, and the effects that are shown upon these characters really does give you a good idea of what that means, what that says about how we maintain our culture, etc., etc. I think it was popular to criticize Army movies in the 1980s. I think you have like the thin blue line or the
red line,
thin red line. You have a lot of movies,
and by this time you've seen all the Vietnam movies, right?
Yeah.
Apocalypse Now, Platoon, all the other Vietnam movies.
You've seen
this is actually the latest one, 1987.
But I think with this one, it does it in such an unflinching manner. It pulls no punches. It makes barely any heroes. Like, you could argue maybe Joker's a hero, but like he's sort of really, really passive throughout this film. He's just trying to get Gomer Pyle, throughout the training, and he's doing like a horrible job at it. Maybe he eventually gets through it. Yeah, he like they eventually teach him the right way to do things. You may think that the beginning portion of the movie dictates a certain level of violence or aggressiveness or intensity that's unwarranted, but honestly, like when you see what they are when they go through the shit, you see what kind of world they have to deal with and how dehumanized they have to be to deal with these situations. It's interesting because I think there's one part of you that understands that intensity of war and what it means to be in that situation, but also, and so I think this film well demonstrates the weight of it having to go into a place and generate the mindset to like kill people freely, and to consider people less than, or consider people not really worthy of consideration, and I think there's a really interesting commentary, a subtext throughout the film due to that, as with Gomer Pyle, as they're trying to train him up, they have to stop treating him with kids' gloves and have to dehumanize him so he can become dehumanized enough to like perform his tasks like a killing robot.
I didn't know anything about Kubrick. This was my first foray into him, and just because of this film, it made me look up the library of his films. All right, so as I dive deep into Kubrick films, I have determined that this is my favorite Kubrick film because this is him in like Super Saiyan level 3, right? This is his ultra instinct. Everything is cohesive. Prior to this, you look at his other films, he always does something kind of artsy-fartsy, even Clockwork Orange, even Dr. Strangelove. You still have that operatic sense. The film still runs in a certain way. This is kind of like, maybe I'm missing something, but I do believe that this is the first time he actually did a Scorsese-esque way of like incorporating the music of that era, the 70s music, the 60s, the late 60s. My dad used to listen to these things a lot. Everything was incorporated. Like the techniques that he used back then is all in here, and The indulgent parts are all cut away. Everything is modernized. Everything is sharp. Everything is done, succinctly. You don't need to be artsy fartsy. You can watch this film by just having fun. You can just laugh at it, or you can dive into it a little bit deeper and actually just ruminate on what the message is or whatever. And the fact that he was the latest Vietnam War movie coming in, what else do you have to offer? Everything was explored. Are you going against Apocalypse Now? Are you going against Platoon? Are you going against all these war films that had a message and this and that? But this one comes in, and the message, what is the message, right? War is hell. But then again, it's fun. But then again, you have to, it's a debate that you have to carry on.
Full Metal Jacket has a definitive main character in Joker. But I think almost in the same way that Full Metal Jacket isn't about Joker, 2001, A Space Odyssey isn't necessarily about Dave Bowman. They're there as representatives of a certain sentiment, but yeah, they don't really stick to the traditional main character narrative. And I think that was really interesting in both films. And I think that says something about Stanley Kubrick in terms of how he's able to create a narrative and not necessarily make it all about a main character.
In terms of artsy-fartsy directors, like you see a lot of these, art house films where they have a message, they have a thing that they want to say. And what happens, what ends up happening if it's handled by a lesser director is that it becomes cheesy, or it becomes like something that it shoves in your mouth and down your throat, and it's like, yeah, whatever the fuck. I don't give a... It turns off some people, it turns me off. But what if you can take somebody that doesn't give a fuck, that's just there for the fun, and then suddenly you make them think? To me, that's the biggest challenge of anything.
Full Metal Jacket can reach many more audiences, and it sort of has a lot of engaging visceral aspects of it that can entice people. But I think that the whole practice of making a film in an artistic sense, or engaging in a film that would do away with convention and do away with main characters and do away with certain type of thrilling aspects, and just try to focus on the artistic measures of a film. I think that level of experimentation is important for the people that want to engage upon it.
Right, so that's what we thought about those two films. Next up, we can elaborate on this more. Next up is Verdict. So Shaun, moment of truth. Which one did you like more?
It's tough to say. I think both films have their merits. I think, like Ron said, Full Metal Jacket is more palatable. I think there's more relatable elements to it. 2001 sort of grows into this experience of experiencing primitive man and their evolution of man from these apes to these sophisticating beings. And that growth, and I think also with 2001 or with Full Metal Jacket, you get a fly on the wall perspective of these soldiers growing from, go lucky sort of individuals, just boys becoming mindless killing machines, and that journey is very interesting and exciting. I think I'm gonna go with 2001. I feel like I can go either way on this, but I'm gonna go with 2001 just because I want to embrace that spirit of experimentation and the idea of taking on a film that doesn't necessarily have convention behind it and exploring that level of experimentation and reading reading any type of medium, reading a story or a movie or a poem in a way that you're not familiar with. I think this is an embrace of that, because 2001 isn't conventional by any standard, and it takes themes and translates them to stories rather than a typical movie that takes a story and translates it to themes. So I'm going to go with 2001. Even though Fullmetal Jacket is a great film, I'm going to go with 2001 in the spirit of exploration.
I'm happy that Shaun did that, because you know where I'm going. Because 2001, A Space Odyssey, is such a benchmark. I mean, who out there can do something like that? The evolution of man. And it does portray a very young, youthful, risk-taking Stanley Kubrick, right? This is a guy who thought that I'm going to make a space opera. I'm going to make it very indulgent, but I'm going to come in because I am Stanley Kubrick and it's going to be a fucking hit. And I'm going to make it 3 hours long, and it's going to be, they've never seen anything like it. It's a space opera. What the fuck, right? Like, even in the beginning, like, you don't even know what the fuck you're looking at. So, absolutely awesome film. But I'm going with Fullmetal Jacket because this is the most powerful Stanley Kubrick version, I feel. This is the Stanley Kubrick that's already very mature and at the height, at the prime, you know, of his filmmaking. He is the absolute black belt here. That's our thought of Stanley Kubrick's films.
You can't go wrong with any of Stanley Kubrick's
No.
film. He's a classic filmmaker, and each film is a step in his evolution as an artist, as a filmmaker. And, you know, from The Killing to all the way up to Eyes Wide Shut, he's always constantly bringing new things to the game. So be it 2001: A Space Odyssey or Fullmetal Jacket, he is both a pleaser of lowbrow and highbrow crowds.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. He is the master.
He is the master.
He can play both ways, and you know, wherever you're coming from, it's fine. It doesn't matter.
Sure. So that's what we thought about both of those classic Stanley Kubrick films. Be sure to tune in next time to find out who was right.
Shaun or Ron? See you guys.